Hello, just Jean talking. I am Jean, registered nurse, maternal child health and family planning nurse practitioner. So my job is to talk to you about some of the systems and situations that go on in our body and to bring it to you in plain English. So here we go. I try to relate my topics one to another so that you eventually get the gist of an entire situation so that it's not so piecemeal that you can't put it all together. So we talked about the sperm and the egg and how they were united in the fallopian tube and they travel down toward the uterus. Okay, so let's go back and kind of re-talk a little bit more of this. Now, the pituitary gland is a gland that's located behind the brain. The pituitary sends a message to the ovary and it says, hey, I need you guys to get busy down there. We need to start working so we can produce an egg. So the ovary says, okay. Ovary has little rooms called cysts or follicles, and each one of those follicles has a capacity to mature and grow an egg to be ejected for possible fertilization. So these guys get busy working. As they work, they produce a hormone called estrogen. Estrogen causes some changes to happen to the body. So as these cysts or follicles work and they mature an egg, at some point one of those follicles takes over and kind of like speeds up ahead of the rest of them, and everybody else kind of falls behind. So this one worker bee follicle works and produces an egg, and at some point in time it releases that egg into the abdominal cavity. The fallopian tube is hovering over that egg that's just been released. It's got the wavy arms I told you about. It hovers over the egg and pulls it up into the fallopian tube. The fallopian tube has little cilia, little hairy projections that cause the egg to move along through the fallopian tube. So at the same time that the message is going out to the ovary, and the ovary starts producing lots of estrogen floating in the bloodstream, a message goes over to the uterus and it says, hey, there's probably going to be a guest coming over there. You all need to get ready. They moving and shaking over here in the ovary. They're probably going to release an egg, and that's going to be coming over to you. Uterus says, fine, no problem. Just like when you're going to have company, what do? You go out and you prepare. You prepare food, nutrients, a bed, a place where they can lay down. Everything is ready for this guest that's possibly coming over. So as the egg and sperm move through the fallopian tube, it actually gets called different names because on different days it's doing different things. It's constantly dividing, and different changes are taking place with that. I'm going to now call it an embryo. So the embryo travels down through the tube and comes down at the uterus. Now the uterus has been working all this time since it's got word that there's activity going on in the ovary. Plus the hormones that the ovary is producing is causing the uterus to have certain changes. Number one, the lining of the uterus, which is called the endometrium, starts to plush up, gets real plush, gets nutrient ready, blood supply, everything is ready in case this person, which is the embryo, comes down and wants to implant. Everything has to be ready. So the embryo travels down, comes down into the uterus. and it burrows itself into the wall of the uterus. Now, going back, at the same time that the message went from the pituitary and told the ovaries to start working to produce an egg, by the time the ovary does produce this egg, the message has gone to the cervix to say, hey, you all get ready. We're getting ready to have an egg going down here. We want to make sure we got some guys coming up in here who can fertilize the egg. The cervix then become very hospitable to the sperm, very amenable. Come on in, come on in. The atmosphere becomes acidic, which is something that the sperm likes, an acid-base area. So the sperm goes up it's implanted into the vagina at ejaculation. So we got these 40 million sperm hanging around. Several of them can actually hang around in that environment of the cervix for 2 or 3 days. And then they'll be ready to pass on up through the uterus, through the cervix, and out to fertilize the egg. So the significance of that is this. Like when they had the Maury show, and this woman is saying, I know for sure who the baby daddy is. Okay, here's the situation. The sperm can hang around in the cervix for several days, couple days. What if she had sex tonight with this guy, and then 2 nights later with another guy? Now you got 2 different sets of sperm that potentially can go into this environment in the cervix. And we don't know which one's going to be able to make it up to actually do the fertilization. So therein lies the problem. Okay, so now let's go back to the implantation of the embryo into the wall of the uterus. When it is implanting, a situation called HCG is formed. That's like another type of hormone. Human chorionic gonadotrophin. A long name, but we call it HCG. That is what helps the embryo to bury into the lining of the uterus and implant itself. This is about day 10 since the ovary pushed that egg out. We're about day 10 now. So we got the implantation attempting to go on. We got HCG working to help it to implant. So the HCG is now floating in the bloodstream. This is what the pregnancy test picks up, the HCG. So that's information for you to use. Now, as this embryo implants, certain changes are taking place with the level of hormone. There's a heavy hormone system going on throughout this reproductive system, because when the embryo got over there and implanted, it sent a message back to the ovary and says, hey, we made it okay, we implanted, we're in bed, we got everything working, we got food, we got everything we need. The ovary says, okay, I'll tell you what, you guys made it okay, I'm happy, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep sending you money to support you. So what the ovary is sending is estrogen and progesterone, 2 hormones that are going to assist this embryo to grow and mature into a fetus or the early baby stage. Okay, so when it does implant, certain things happen. Again, I said the HCG level is up. Also, the lady may experience certain symptoms. She may have a slight feeling of nausea. She might feel like she wants to eat a certain thing. Might have a little cramping. All this is because that implantation is taking place, and there could be actually a little spotting of blood something like this that goes on due to the implantation. Okay, so we got the embryo implanted. Everything's working well. We're about day 10. Within about 4 weeks, we've actually got a heartbeat. The systems are starting to form inside the body of the embryo that's growing now. It has now divided and divided and divided, and it's now up to probably 400 or so cells. Everything's going well. So if everything continues to go well, the embryo changes into a fetus, an actual little baby, and it's growing. And at about 36 weeks, the child will be born. Now, let's go back to this endometrium, this lining of the uterus. This lining is being acted upon by that estrogen and progesterone is being produced by the ovaries to support that growing embryo. What if a little bit of that endometrium escaped from the uterus and say it traveled out and was now located somewhere over there by the ovary, somewhere it's not supposed to be? But wherever it is, it's still acting like it's in the uterus. It's still being influenced by the estrogen and the progesterone, the hormones. It's still acting like it's preparing for an implantation, but it's in the wrong place. Now we got endometriosis. Okay, I want to make that point. Now let's go back and create a situation where the embryo came down to the uterus and wanted to implant, but something is wrong, something is offbeat. The situation is not right. Not enough nutrients, the blood supply is not right. The estrogen progesterone output is not sufficient. So that embryo doesn't get to implant. Even though it got fertilized, it didn't get to implant. Or it could be a situation where the embryo, where the egg came out and it never got fertilized. Lady didn't even have any sex, so it didn't get fertilized. So when it came down into the uterine cavity, there's nothing going on. There's nobody to support, nothing happening. So that endometrial lining just sheds itself. Sheds and goes out through the cervix, out through the vagina. The lady has her period. There you go. So, I hope that you learned something from that. I'm exhausted from telling it. So don't forget to go and subscribe and support me as much as possible. I really appreciate it. And I do want your comments. I especially like comments, suggestions, even if they're negative. Thank you. Help a sister out.